On July 29, 2008, a mother of two named Susan Powell recorded a video documenting the assets in her home in Utah, just in case. In her own words, "Something happens to me. This is me, July 29, 2008. It is 12:33 Mountain Time. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as possible." The video was made on her attorney's advice. He feared that Susan's husband, Josh, might attempt to sell some of her most valuable assets. In the years leading up to this now infamous recording, the couple's marriage had been under immense strain. As Susan recorded, she hinted that things had been anything but peaceful between her and Josh. "This is all stuff bought in a year or less through Home Depot on my credit. Josh bought a lot of stuff, and then he had to bankrupt it. And then he bought a little bit more on my credit. There's a nice lamp. These are, things to roll wood with. And I had necklaces too. I don't know where those are. Got in a rage, as you can see, and broke this. There's diamonds and pearls and opals in there. Broke this and threw all my DVDs. Made a mess because he was angry at me about a year or two back." Although Susan had been seeing a divorce attorney to explore the possibility of leaving her husband, they were still living together in 2009. Almost a year and a half after recording the video, on the morning of December 6th, Susan went to church with her two boys. Afterward, a neighbor visited her home, leaving at around 5 p.m. That night, Josh allegedly took their two sons, Charlie and Braden Powell, on a last-minute camping trip in the middle of a blizzard to a remote campsite on the Pony Express Trail. According to Josh, Susan had stayed home because she was tired. The next day, when their two boys weren't dropped off at daycare, Susan's family and friends reported her missing. When Josh returned from his so-called camping trip with his sons, he told authorities that Susan had been sleeping peacefully at home when he left, and he had no idea what could have happened to her. After searching the Powell home, police found no immediate signs of foul play, but as the investigation continued, things only got stranger. Inside Susan's safe deposit box at the bank where she worked, investigators discovered a handwritten will and testament. In it, Susan alleged that Josh had recently taken out a $1 million life insurance policy on her. Even more chilling, she had written, "If I die, it may not be an accident." About 10 days after Susan vanished, authorities discovered that Josh had filed paperwork to withdraw money from a retirement account. He was officially declared a person of interest in the case. Yet, despite the growing evidence against him, Josh Powell was never formally charged. Investigators questioned the couple's two sons, but due to their young age, getting reliable information was difficult. They did mention that Josh had taken their mother on the camping trip with them the night she disappeared, but they also made outlandish claims, including that they had traveled there by airplane. This made it impossible to use their statements as concrete evidence against Josh. Shortly after, Josh and his sons moved back to Washington, but the authorities soon determined it wasn't safe for Braden and Charlie to be living with their father. In the middle of the investigation, Josh lost custody of the boys, and this is where things take a horrifying turn. On February 5, 2012, more than 2 years after Susan's disappearance, a state caseworker brought the two boys to Josh's house for what was supposed to be a supervised visit. The moment they arrived, Josh pulled them inside and slammed the door, locking the social worker out. Then, he did the unthinkable. Josh poured gasoline around the house and set it on fire, killing himself and his two children in the explosion. If his behavior during the initial investigation was suspicious, the unspeakable crime he committed that day in 2012 was as close to an admission of guilt as one could get. In the aftermath, police began looking into Josh's brother and father, suspecting they knew more than they had let on. Investigators found strong evidence that Josh's brother, Michael, had helped him conceal Susan's body. But before police could take further action, Michael took his own life in 2013. More than a decade later, Susan's father won a lawsuit against Washington State for nearly $100 million. The court ruled that the state had been negligent in failing to protect the two children who were supposed to be in their custody. A significant portion of the settlement was donated to a charity supporting domestic violence survivors. Even now, Nearly 15 years after Susan's disappearance and the murder of her 2 children, people still gather in her hometown of Puyallup, Washington, to honor her memory. The last video Susan ever recorded, her attempt to document her assets, gained even more attention after the tragedy. With the benefit of hindsight, it is haunting to watch. Hearing Susan say, "I'm recording this just in case anything happens," makes you wonder, did she know? Did she sense what her husband was capable of? Over the years, Susan's father has been alerted to potential locations where his daughter's remains might be buried, including abandoned mines in Utah and other isolated locations. But every lead has led to nothing. Sadly, it is very unlikely that Susan Powell's remains will ever be found. Amber Tucarro was a 20-year-old Canadian First Nations woman from Fort McMurray, Alberta. In August of 2012, she flew from Alberta to Edmonton International Airport and booked a hotel room with her 1-year-old son and a female friend for a short vacation. That night, excited about the trip, she decided to hitchhike into the city by herself and was never seen again. When Amber didn't return to the hotel the next day, her friend called Amber's mother, who immediately contacted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Soon after, Amber was declared a missing person. The authorities began looking into her phone records and discovered that she had received a call while in the company of an unidentified man. What they found was chilling. The recording captured the last time Amber was ever heard alive.
Where are we by?
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont.
We're heading north of Beaumont. Yo, where are we going?
Just
No, this is a... Are you f***ing kidding me? You better not take me anywhere I don't want to go. I want to go into the city. Jeez. Yo, we're not going into the city, are we?
We're going.
No, we're not.
Yes.
Then where the these roads going to?
50th Street.
50th Street. Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Yo, where are we going?
50th Street.
50th Street?
50th Street.
East, right?
East.
Over town.
Bravo.
In the recording, the male driver can be heard reassuring Amber that they are heading in the right direction, but Amber isn't convinced. Her voice is tense. She knows something isn't right. On August 28th, the police released the phone conversation to the public, but shockingly, they didn't launch an official investigation into Amber's disappearance until well over a month after she was reported missing. Even worse, when Amber's mother desperately pressured the police to take action, they dismissed her concerns. They told her that Amber was probably just out partying and would turn up soon. Then, just 4 days after the eerie phone call was released to the public, tragedy struck. On September 1st, 2012, the remains of Amber's body were discovered on a rural property near Leduc County by a group of horseback riders. She had been murdered. One of the most frustrating aspects of this case is how terribly law enforcement handled the investigation. After just 1 month of searching, Amber was removed from the missing persons list based on a series of suspicious, unconfirmed, and anonymous sightings in Edmonton. Her mother fought tirelessly for another month to get her back on the list, but by then, it was too late. Any potential evidence had already been destroyed. Items from Amber's hotel room, items that could have helped solve her murder, had been accidentally discarded by police. Over the years, several women have come forward claiming to know the identity of the man in the recording, and all of them have accused the same person. Yet, despite this, the authorities have refused to name him as a person of interest. A few years later, another man came forward and claimed that the voice in the recording belonged to his father, an American citizen with no legal status in Canada who had been living on a ranch near Edmonton. If his testimony is to be believed, his father may also be responsible for several other disappearances and deaths in the area over the years. One of the most disturbing aspects of Amber's case is the way the man in the recording speaks to her. His dishonesty is clear as day. His reassurance sounds fake, and when Amber questions him, his forced "absolutely" is enough to send chills down your spine. But perhaps even more disturbing is how law enforcement failed Amber from the very start. Many people believe that the authorities' gross mishandling of her case was driven by racism, another example of how Indigenous women in Canada are often ignored and mistreated by the justice system. To this day, Amber's murderer has never been brought to justice. Hopefully one day, the truth about what happened to Amber Tucarro will come to light. But for now, her case remains one of Canada's most haunting unsolved crimes. The unsolved disappearance of Dale Kerstetter and the theft of $250,000 worth of platinum piping from a factory in Bradford, Pennsylvania, remains one of the strangest unsolved mysteries ever caught on camera. Dale was 50 years old and just 6 months away from retirement when he vanished without a trace in the midst of a bizarre crime. The mystery began on the night of September 12, 1987. Dale had recently been let go from his job in the trade shop at the Corning Glassworks plant due to company downsizing. To make up for the lost income, he started working extra shifts as a weekend security guard. That evening, Dale arrived for work about half an hour early. His shift was supposed to start at 11 p.m., but at 10:30 p.m., he relieved the guard on duty before him. Soon after Dale took over, the rest of the workers left, and he was supposed to be alone in the factory for the next 8 hours. But when the next security guard arrived at 7 a.m., he found the factory completely empty. Dale was missing. His lunch pail and plant keys were sitting untouched on a table inside, and outside, his Jeep was still parked in the lot, with the keys still in the ignition and a pack of cigarettes inside. At first, Dale's employers assumed he had gone off drinking, but by that evening, it became clear that something far more sinister had happened. The police were called, and the investigation into his disappearance began. Sniffer dogs followed Dale's scent around the factory, tracing his usual patrol route. Strangely, they also picked up his scent near the kiln, an area he wasn't supposed to go near. A search of the surrounding area turned up no trace of Dale. Then police checked the security footage, and what they found was chilling. Dale had not been alone that night. About 10 minutes after he arrived, a mysterious, unidentified man entered the factory. He was wearing a mask, and the footage was so grainy that it was difficult to make out any details. What could be seen, however, was that Dale spoke with the intruder for a while and even walked with him. Then, Dale simply vanished. After 10:45 p.m., he was never seen on camera again. Meanwhile, the masked intruder made his way to the glass kiln and began removing the platinum pipes stored inside. Over the course of several hours, the unknown man methodically stole $250,000 worth of platinum, an essential material used in the factory's manufacturing process. At one point, he was seen carrying a large, heavy-looking bag from a side room, using a forklift to transport it. In the early hours of the morning, the intruder left, disappearing into the night. The factory remained undisturbed until the next security guard arrived for his shift. Was Dale involved in the crime, or was he a victim? The masked man seemed to know the layout of the factory exceptionally well. This suggests that he had either been an employee or had inside knowledge of the facility. But if he was familiar with security protocols, why would he start the heist just 20 minutes before a shift change? It doesn't add up, unless Dale was complicit. On the other hand, there was no evidence of a struggle, no signs of violence. Some believe the intruder killed Dale and hid his body in the bag he was seen carrying away. Others think Dale might have willingly disappeared, possibly participating in the heist and escaping with his share of the stolen platinum. But if Dale had been part of the crime, why didn't he resurface after the statute of limitations expired? Why vanish forever? His family insists that he had no reason to disappear. He wasn't desperate for money, and he had no history of criminal activity. They believe he was an innocent man caught up in something far bigger than anyone realized. To this day, what happened to Dale Kerstetter and the missing platinum remains an unsolved mystery. The eerie security footage only raises more questions, leaving investigators and his loved ones searching for answers that may never come. This unsolved mystery didn't get much attention when it first happened, and the lack of publicity hasn't helped uncover new information. But the chilling footage from a missing man's doorbell camera is enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Nguyen disappeared on August 17, 2017. He was 32 years old and lived in Grand Prairie, Texas. Not much is known about his life, but he was a Vietnamese-American man who drove a Nissan 350Z convertible. The last confirmed sighting of Hop was at around 10:30 p.m. that night, He was seen driving his car on State Highway 161, exiting Laura Durant Road. At some point, Hop's friends and family realized something was wrong. He wasn't answering calls. He hadn't come home. And then, he was officially reported missing. When police looked into his case, they initially found no evidence of foul play. But then, someone gained access to Hop's Ring doorbell camera, a device that streams a live feed to the owner and records whenever movement is detected. What they found was disturbing. The footage, recorded the night Hop vanished, shows an unidentified man walking backward toward the front door, carefully ensuring his face never appears on camera. Then, he slowly reaches out and covers the lens with a piece of paper, blocking the view. In the background, the sound of either keys jingling or a lockpick being used can be heard, and then, click, the door opens. A few seconds later, 2 beeps can be heard, possibly from a home security system. There's some faint movement, as if the paper has slipped slightly, and then the video cuts out. Hop's family and friends later released the footage, hoping it would help uncover the truth, but some crucial details remain unknown. Exactly when was the video recorded? Was Hop inside the house at the time? And, most importantly, who was that man? Speculation quickly spread. Some suggested Hop may have been involved in criminal activity, pointing to the fact that he was missing the tip of his right index finger and had the letters TFT tattooed on his right arm. But police have never confirmed any gang ties, and those who knew him insist he wasn't involved in anything illegal. One thing seems clear: Hop was targeted. But why? And by whom? To this day, Hop Nguyen remains missing. He was last seen wearing a dark-colored shirt and jeans. He is described as being 5 feet 7 inches, 170 centimeters tall, weighing 165 pounds, 75 kilograms, with a sleeve tattoo of a dragon on his right arm and a scar behind his right ear. The eerie doorbell footage remains one of the only clues in his case, and a chilling reminder that sometimes people vanish without a trace. Jase Ross vanished without a trace late one November night in 2006. The last known sighting of him was caught on a security camera at the Sheraton Hotel in Chicago. And then, nothing. No more footage, no more leads. Just an unsolved mystery, made even stranger by the fact that, after Jase left the hotel lobby, the trail simply ended. Jase was 19 years old, a student at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. He had recently landed a job on a morning radio show and had no known problems in his life. In 2005, he attended a Model United Nations conference in Chicago and enjoyed it so much that he decided to go again the following year. For the most part, the trip went as planned, but on the final night of the conference, something went terribly wrong. On the evening of November 20th, students who attended the event gathered for a party. Alcohol wasn't supposed to be served, but many, including Jase, were drinking. Then, at 12:30 a.m., a mock emergency security council meeting was called. Jase attended the meeting, but those present later reported that he wasn't very talkative. At some point between 2 and 3 a.m., Jase told a friend he needed a break and stepped out of the conference room. He wandered down to the lower level of the hotel, where security cameras captured him walking toward the main doors. And then, just like that, he was gone. Here's where things get even more bizarre. Almost all entrances and exits of the hotel were covered by security cameras, yet none of them recorded Jase leaving. However, there was one door, a staff entrance on the south side, that was not under surveillance. Conference attendees were allowed to use it, so it's possible Jase left through this exit. But even if he did, what happened next? The route back to the hotel where he and his fellow students were staying was well lit, lined with bars and expensive shops, many of which had security cameras. Not a single one captured Jase that night. Some have suggested he may have been disoriented due to alcohol and wandered in the wrong direction. Others fear he might have tried to climb over the 4-foot railing that lined the Chicago River and fallen in. By the next morning, when it became clear Jase was missing, a search began. Despite extensive efforts by police and private investigators hired by the Ross family, no trace of Jase has ever been found. His parents have their doubts about the official story. At one point, they claimed that students were told by the university not to discuss the incident, though the school denies this. While they do not believe Jase simply fell into the river, they also fear that, after all these years, he is no longer alive. Jase Ross was 5 feet 10 inches, 178 centimeters tall, and weighed 140 pounds, 63 kilograms. He had short red hair and wore dark-framed glasses. On the night of his disappearance, he was last seen wearing a white t-shirt, a green jacket, and jeans. To this day, his case remains a haunting mystery. No evidence, no answers, just a young man who walked out of a hotel and was never seen again.